Well, Dr. Duncan Robertson is an academic at Loughborough University's School of Business and Economics. Duncan, morning.
Oh, hi, Ben.
Look, we were talking to a representative of the Federation of Small Business right at the beginning of the show, and he was saying, the enormous effect that's already having on that sector. How do you balance then, on the one hand, trying to protect the population from this virus, on the other hand, not smashing the economy to pieces?
Well, I think the problem is the economy is being smashed to pieces, and there's probably very little we can do about that. So really, from a sort of personal point of view, you've got an option about what you can do, about how fast you spread this virus. So one thing that you can do is just get everyone close together in stadiums and rock concerts and that sort of thing, which seems to be what's happening at the moment. And that spreads the virus very, very, very fast. The other thing you do is put everyone really far apart and just make sure they don't have come into any contact with each other. But the thing that you're trying to do is to get this virus to spread. So it's going to spread, and it's going to probably get to around 80% of the population. And you want to do that in a controlled manner so it meets up with the capacity of the NHS.
No, that's really interesting. I saw a guy on social media across the weekend, and I thought he'd done it really, really well. He got a bucket with a hole in it, and he got another big bucket, and he poured some water into it. And if he poured it in at a steady rate, then the water going in was balanced by the water going out. If you poured it in too quickly, then the water going out wasn't enough, and it overflowed. And the reason he was doing that was he was trying to show essentially we're the water, and the NHS is the bucket, and it's trying to balance that. So you might get it up towards the top of the bucket, but you don't want it to overflow.
Yeah, I've seen that video. It's brilliant. So what I'm doing, I'm part of one of these sort of modelers at Loughborough University, and we model how things spread across systems, business systems, economic systems, and I'm preparing to work at home. And it's my daughter's 5th birthday today. And one of the things I was doing is playing with her Play-Doh. She was not very cross at that. And you get some matches, and there's a video on my website, which is duncanrobertson.com, and you can see how you can spread this virus. So one thing you can do is you can set off a match, and matches are all close together. They're people like us, and it sort of explodes, and that's kind of potentially what happens. Or you can get this sort of optimal spreading. So have a look at that. And we don't have buckets, but we do have matches. But don't play with matches, people.
Well, quite. So there's a sort of an acceptance there, isn't it? That it's about stopping the virus is what, not possible or not wanted.
Well, I mean, we'd all want to stop this virus. The problem is it's just so contagious. As you can see, what's been happening in Italy, in South Korea, in Japan, and previously in China, it's spread around the world. There's little we can do about that. We can try and, isolate people, particularly the people who are most at risk. So these are the people who are over 65 and people in care homes, for example. And so that's one way we can do.
Now, look, there's an interesting point about this, and I've heard quite a lot about on the Breakfast Show, for example, this morning. Lord Willie Bart, the PCC for Police and Crime Commissioner for Leicestershire, saying, "Well, hang on a minute, I'm 73, I'm fit and hale and hearty. I certainly don't feel 73." And lots of other people on Twitter saying, "Well, hang on a minute, I've just played 9 rounds of golf. I'm going to go and do some yoga in a bit. I work full time." Those people are saying, "Well, hang on, I don't feel remotely, for want of a better phrase, elderly. Why should I self-isolate myself?"
Well, the problem is that there are going to be some very difficult ethical decisions that doctors are going to have to come up with in a few weeks and months about who gets treated. And the thing is, you want to be out of the people who are most at risk at the time that the NHS is completely overloaded. So I think one thing to do is to prevent your putting yourself at higher risk until the NHS capacity has gone over that peak and people are more able to be treated.
Okay, so you're trying to hold back when you get it to a time when, frankly, there is more capacity to be able to be looked after.
Exactly, that's right. And I think one of the things that I don't think is realised by a lot of people is the real enormity of this thing that's coming. I mean, you can look at the stock market, but you can also look at the predictions about how many people are sadly going to die from this. And it's of the same sort of order as the number of people who died in the UK in World War II. So it's a big thing coming.
And is that definitely going to happen? I mean, because I suppose that the problem is we had bird flu and H1N1 and all that kind of stuff that, okay, it was serious, but it hasn't got to this level at all.
Well, that's right. And it's not, we can't, in any model or prediction, we can't be sure. So what we need to be is prudent, and we need to make sure that we set our policies to take into account what could happen. And it's unfortunately looking more and more like this is going to be a very serious disease.
There seems to be there's a lot of discussion over the weekend in news channels and so on about whether Britain is out of step with the reaction and the response rather of other countries. Is that true? And if so, why are we?
So it is outside what's happening around most of Europe and increasingly in parts of the United States. So why we're out of step, I can only speculate. So one of the ideas is that we've got epidemiologists. These are the people who look at diseases and how they spread. And we've got a group of behavioural scientists in government who are looking at how people react to those to policies. And it's difficult to see who's winning in that sort of tension. I think originally the behavioural scientists were winning, and now the epidemiologists and the scientists are beginning to be listened at more. So it's a real sort of battle. And so I think what we're going to see is more about the epidemiological spread rather than the behavioural.
Because ultimately, as I understand it, having read an article at the weekend, what we essentially have to do is do what we're told when we're told to do it.
That's one thing. And of course, what the government's doing is they're being quite clever in that they're just sort of setting up these kind of trial balloons of and priming people to say, actually, you are going to be, things are going to change over time. So actually, they are doing quite a good strategy of just getting people to think a little bit more about what they're doing. So I think that's what I'd encourage people to do, is to think about their own behaviour. Don't panic, but just to think about what can I do personally to help myself and others.
Duncan, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'd love to have you on again. I've no doubt it may even be later on this week. I'll let you go back to playing with your Play-Doh, though.
Thank you very much. I'll tell my daughter. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks so much. Duncan, before you go, what's your web address so people can go and have a look at that? The way you
It's DuncanRobertson.com. Go and have a look at it and look at me playing with matches. But, as I say, with other public information films, one they can say is don't play with matches.
Duncan, thanks. Dr. Duncan Robertson, academic at Loughborough University School of Business and Economics, joining us here on BBC Radio Leicester. I have a feeling we'll get to know Duncan quite well in the coming weeks.